Now, the question is, once they come into that workplace, what can we do to make them feel safe? And one of the things that we are doing at CoWrks, we've just launched a marketing campaign to say that, workspaces that feel like home.
So welcome to the Blue Circle, and thank you all for joining in today. It's such a big privilege and a pleasure to reconnect with everyone and our distinguished panelists who are handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience they bring in. And thank you to our distinguished audience. We've received over 300 registrations and 90% of whom are CEOs and CXOs. Many of them are repeat visitors also, which is very encouraging and motivates us to provide even higher levels of dialogue to our online channels as well. So for those of you who are new with us today, the Blue Circle is an ecosystem to help business leaders manage disruptive times, become future ready. We focus on the 5 fundamental sectors, which are real estate, energy, EV, retail, and healthcare. We also present socio-economic insights which ultimately determine the evolving complexion of the market. In response to the COVID challenge, the Blue Circle has also accentuated its digital presence. One of the many modes we employ is our weekly webinar series for these sectors. We're very active on the digital publication space as well. And we're now building a hand-picked pool of domain-focused experts drawn from our leadership community or from our member base and its associates that will guide businesses during and post-COVID in these 5 sectors. And in addition to this, you will be happy to know that we will very soon be launching an exclusive digital platform, somewhat like a LinkedIn for leaders, but more focused towards idea exchange and business learning, which will also present the opportunity for leaders to connect with each other, people just like them, also house highly curated content and meaningful conversations. Those leaders who are interested are invited to write to us. And today we've invited prominent practitioners and thought leaders from the real estate sector in India and the world. And now in the best interest of time, I will just quickly mention their respective names and designations. We have with us Mr. Abhishek Goenka, CEO of CoWrks, Mr. Vinod Rohira, CEO Commercial Real Estate, Raheja, Mr. Mani Rangarajan, Group COO, Elara Group, Ms. Sigrid Zialcita, CEO, Asia Pacific Real Estate Association, and the moderator for the session is Mr. Pavan Choudary, author, CEO, and public intellectual. Welcome all, and thank you very much for joining us. So now kindly note that we will have Q&A towards the end of the session, and some of you who have already sent in questions are with the moderator as well. And now I request Mr. Choudary to please begin the session.
Okay, great. Big pleasure, Siddharth, and I'm very happy to see this distinguished panel, as well as I'm told many CXOs and CEOs. So it is said that 84% of the time which we spend in buildings. And in the last 80 days, I think it is not 84%, I think 100% of the time which we are spending in buildings. Siddharth, there is some kind of a disturbance which is coming. So if you will just mute all the microphones other than mine. Yeah, I think we've got it. So in the last 84 days or so, we are spending 100% of the time in one building, which is my home. So the importance of buildings is really underlined. And buildings not only form not only follows function, form follows infection also. So when the rat was discovered during the 3rd plague, the rat was discovered as the culprit. Not only the drain pipes design changed, the thresholds of homes and workplaces went up, foundations changed. During the tuberculosis era, the brightly lit sanatoriums during that era, they inspired white painted homes. They inspired rooms with bathrooms with glazed tiles, which can be easily swept clean. So architecture not only follows function, it follows infection also, and buildings are often our first line of defense against any bacteria or pathogen or virus. So keeping this in mind, I think we are coming to a very important discussion, which is how will we keep the workplaces where we are rebringing our employees to safe. And to limit our discussion and have a deep discussion in this area, I would like to limit it to workplaces, that means offices, though of course a lot of what we say here will apply to malls, stores, theaters, etc. However, let us perimeter our discussion around workplaces, offices. And in terms of time, let us limit from the time COVID has struck for the next 3 years. So after broadly laying this template, I come to the first and most important question. How will we minimize the risk for employees who return to their workplaces? Let us start with money. Money. We can't hear you.
Thank you for attending this webinar, and thank you for inviting me, Blue Circle. And I'm so happy to be along with a fellow distinguished panel. Before I answer this question, let's kind of understand the environment that we live in today in India. So India, as we know, is a densely populated country, a second most populous country in the world. And the COVID pandemic is evolving even as we speak. Right? So as a country, I don't think we have done very widespread testing. We have done testing to in some areas. And every day there are new containment zones that are emerging. And the number of cases is increasing every day, although the recovery rates are also pretty good in India. And I think the central and the state governments are also dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, you had Chennai, which has reimposed a lockdown from June 19 to around June 30th. So, in this context, I think as an organization and as a leader, we all need to be very empathetic to people working for the companies. And people working with us have very, very different perceptions of risk. So I was reading a study which said that about 50% of people who are currently working, in their workplace pre-COVID are willing to return to work, right? So there are several things that we need to factor in. One is the mental health of the employees and whether the employees are willing to kind of come to work. The second thing is that, as Pavan said, we have had almost 3 months of working remotely. And these 3 months of working remotely has given us plenty of data around how people are able to work in a remote environment. And I'm referring both to sales as well as non-sales. So I think we need to look at data, we need to look at productivity levels, and then we need to say that the absolute mission critical employees are the ones that need to return to work. And that kind of differs from organization to organization. For some organizations, it may be operations. For some organizations, it may be IT support. And for some organizations, it may be sales. And once you decide on the units that need to come back to work, the next thing to do is to say, when do they need to come back to work, right? So considering social distancing, the need to sanitize the workplace frequently, I think all organizations should look at rostering their employees and not make people come to work every day, but kind of create like a roster so that some people come in like 2 to 3 days a week. And also organizations need to equip themselves with Arogya Setu or some other form of contact tracing tools. And if people are going outside to meet customers, then every person should be asked to maintain a list of people that they interacted with. So these are in broad kind of the risk factors that I would consider. Uh, the other thing is that, as we think of the future workplace, and as Pavan said, even if we take over the next 3 years, uh, I think the workplace has changed for good. So you're going to have more and more people work remotely. And as an organization, I think this is not the time to kind of expand your workplace. On the contrary, you need to rationalize the workplace to fit in with the needs of your organization and factor growth in. And you have to be very, very serious about social distancing norms and ensure that when people come into work, the workplace is fully sanitized. You follow all the protocols. You talk to your building manager and ensure that they are following the protocols, and ensure that the workplace is absolutely safe. And also, you need to maintain a process of constant communication to the employee with the employees, because the employee's mental health is as important as a physical health. You don't want people to feel scared coming into work. That's the last thing you want. You'd rather let such people work remote, because then they'd be more productive and be happier to work with you. So
Excellent.
that's all I have to say.
Very good. Very good start. I think you have mentioned substitution of the workforce. That means what workforce is really critical. You have mentioned certain technological interventions like Arogya Setu, etc. And you have also mentioned administrative controls in the sense of cleaning, sanitizing, etc. Great. And another point which you brought in was related to one of the questions which I have received, and I'm happy to answer it from your side, that you feel that the demand for a workplace may shrink in times to come. So great. Let me bring in Abhishek. Abhishek, what would you like to add to that? What Mani has said, that what are the ways to minimize the risk for employees who return to their workplaces?
Sure. Thanks, Pavan. When I wear the hat as CEO of CoWrks, for us, it's not just ensuring the safety of our own employees, but it's also, ensuring the safety of every one of our members and, their respective employees. So, we in that sense carry a much higher burden, and we're happy to do so. I think Mani is given a very, very broad and comprehensive perspective. But from my side, I'd just like to add three things. Firstly, we at CoWrks and I individually have always used this line that work is not a destination, work is an activity, right? And, I think that is very relevant in these times, because it's helpful to understand that you're not only working while you're at your workplace, so you can be working from anywhere. Having said that, I'm not getting into a work from home debate as to whether that's sustainable in the long run or not. I think the jury is generally of the view that people do want to come back to a formal workplace for a variety of reasons, and we can skip over those for a moment. Now, the question is, once they come into that workplace, what can we do to make them feel safe? And one of the things that we are doing at CoWrks, we've just launched a marketing campaign to say that, workspaces that feel like home, right? Because ultimately, what is it that, of course, you liked working from home because there was no commute and you could, wear shorts instead of trousers and things like that. But I think one of the more fundamental advantages of working from home was the fact that you felt safe. And therefore, what can we do at our workspaces to give you that same feeling of safety? Now, while one can't undermine the importance of sanitization and hygiene, to us that is the de minimis. That is a tick in the box that you have to do. What can you do beyond that? We are doing again two things. One, to all our members, we are saying that if you had seats with us in one particular CoWrks location, we have special offers where you can now work out of any of our centers, right? So that way you're able to distribute your teams. We're saying that we're not only giving you this offer with our own centers, but you can actually do so with all other centers that we have partnered with. So to that extent, we're bringing the length and breadth of the country to their doorstep almost literally. The other thing is that, obviously people today are reluctant to have meetings, and rightly so. So again, one of the things that we're doing is we have a lot of meeting rooms in our spaces. We are opening them up to our members and saying that, you don't need to use up your credits to book them. You can just book them as an extended workspace, and again, spread out your employees so that people, feel safer working in the workplace. The third thing is a very tech-led solution. So again, in addition to everything that Mani rightly mentioned, we've almost made the entire experience touchless. And this took a lot of effort, not from the tech side, but our whole philosophy at CoWrks was very high on member engagement and community, right? It was all about our teams literally being there all the time, attending to everything you want. So we've completely turned that on the head and said now everything that you need in the center, the same business class hospitality and business class service, will all be tech enabled. So whether it is accessing the coffee machine, whether it's accessing the snack vending machine, we've got through our own app Bluetooth sensors. So if two people are too close to each other, it generates an alert. We have AI tools that can detect people not wearing masks, and that generates an alert. We have density sensors. So, we've pulled out all the stops from really implementing a series of tech-led initiatives to make people feel absolutely safe at our workspace.
Excellent point. Next time, Abhishek, please speak up a bit. But I know that everybody heard you clearly. But as we progress, maybe our auditory faculties start fatiguing. This is just as a caveat to that. Great points you have made. You have said work is not a destination; it is an activity. Workplaces that feel like home is what you are trying to provide. I fully agree with this. And I would just like to add one more angle to work from home. Of course, that is not a part of this discussion, and we will surely deep dive into that someday. Is that work from home has also made the power balance tilt a little back to the employee, because uh, because the superior or the supervisor does not have that kind of physical, let me say for want of a better word, strangulation as he had earlier. So this has been seen in earlier pandemics also. Some pandemics really changed the power balance in the society. And great points you have made, bringing in Sigrid. Sigrid, Abhishek has very well focused on the interior environment of the workplace. How can the risks be minimized here? Adding to what he and Mani have already said.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank Blue Circle for inviting me. And just to put things into context, I am based here in Singapore. I head up the Asia Pacific Real Estate Association, and our membership consists of many owners, landlords who own commercial properties in Asia Pacific. So my answers will be reflecting what we have heard and also seen on the ground in many of the places where things have started to resume activity. So I will be just using the case of China and also Hong Kong, Singapore. We're now about to reopen. We're phase one, entering phase two of our post-circuit breaker period. And so what we're doing here, what we've seen is that just to add a few points to what our previous panelists here have mentioned, technology plays a central role in many of our landlords' response to getting back people into the office. Operational capabilities are very central. It's become a core competency, and they develop that by the extensive use of technology in their operations. But just to kind of like give a macro view here, a lot of these markets before operating, the governments have played a very central role in setting the guidelines. And this is true for China, for Hong Kong, and Singapore. So why? Because there's really no blueprint to use in the past. All of us are struggling. How do we actually get back into the office safely? And so these guidelines are shared with many of the landlords, to everyone. And what has happened is that there's a lot of dialogue happening between the occupier or the tenants and also the landlords to make sure that they flesh these out. A lot of these guidelines that that they are in compliance to what the government has put out there. And at the same time, enforcement is very strict in many of these places. So a lot companies can get penalized by not complying with some of these things. The key here is that you want many of the employees to come back safe, and this has to be a gradual process. What we have seen in these places is that the resumption of work happened in stages. So the first stage should have about 25 to 30% of the workforce being back physically in the office. It's a lot easier to manage that. And of course, there are some protocols that have to be followed, and the measures. And so that happens for about a month or so. And then going into the phase 2, and many of these markets are now into 90% capacity, not yet at the pre-COVID levels of 100% office occupancy. But what's interesting is this, Mani has mentioned about the work from home, and even I think Abhishek, but in many places in Asia, in Hong Kong, for example, people are asking that everyone is almost back in the office. And why is that so? If work from home is such a good thing and people have embraced it, why are employees back in the office? Because a lot of the homes in Asian cities today are really designed for multi-generational families. They don't have any home offices that they can use to be able for them to carry out their work. And so that has become an impediment for some of these markets, like Hong Kong, even in some places in China, the major markets in China. And that's the reason why many of the employees have been going back to the office, just because it's a lot easier to do their work in the office physically than being at home. So, and that has been quite, in Singapore, that's also been is also true. I would say that right now people are working from home out of necessity because we have to do it. Over the long term is something else. And so this is something that, obviously we'll be discussing later on how this would be affecting the design and the architecture.
No, very good point. I think you have made us see this whole question from another lens. The lens of the have and the have-nots, or the have big and the have small. That some people have large homes and they can be easily adapted to working very comfortably. Others may not have that facility. There might be too many acoustic disturbances. There might not be space enough, not elegant Zoom corners. And let me tell you, I am a believer in functional furnishing, and I had to for long look for a good Zoom corner. And the final one which I found, I find a problem here because I don't sometimes come in the center of these two pictures behind me, like today. So the point which I'm making is this is a very small problem. There are many other problems which people having smaller homes have, and they might be looking at the office as not a bad place to go back to, but a deliverance from their congestion. Great point. Coming to Vinod. Vinod, please add to what has been said as to what are the ways to minimize risks for employees who return to work to their workplace.
So while the opportunity of having to speak last on a subject like this, pretty much everyone has covered a lot of the aspects of what's getting done at the workplace and what are the drivers behind wanting to go back to work, etc., etc. I'd like to make 2-3 critical observations. And we manage more than 22 million square feet with almost 200,000 people get in and out of the workplace. And like you mentioned, 84% of your time is spent inside a building. There is no guarantee that your house is safe. You want to stay at home because some of us have been fortunate to have an extended family. You have family living with you together. You have a comfortable home. And it doesn't make a difference. You have technology, you have the conveniences, you have the Wi-Fi, you have the air conditioning, you have the support infrastructure, and you can adapt to work really quickly. But 70–80% of India's workforce, especially in the technology spaces, is millennials. They are all migratory in nature. They are living out of chamris or one-bedroom apartments, etc. And all of them don't have anything called infrastructure. Why are we saying that those homes are safe? Those homes are also not safe because the amount of extensive protocols we can adapt to and provide for in organized large landlord workspaces cannot be adapted for in large complexes or smaller buildings or smaller households, where you cannot spend money on the sanitization protocol, on the advanced protocol systems, equipments. Take, for example, when we're sanitizing our buildings, besides the sanitization protocol, which has been spoken of a lot, so I'm not going to delve too much into that. We are looking at how do we upgrade our air conditioning system. So, for example, we are adding a UV layer to all our air handling units across of our parks, over 21 million square feet. So in the next couple of months, you will have every air that is filtered in inside your office burnt out of all bacteria and viruses through the UV filtration system. We are getting chemicals coated around every public touch point, where they will last between 90 to 120 days in terms of zero bacteria that can survive on the contact of that touch point. So even if you touch a handle, you're safe because it's been treated. Over and above, getting UV lights installed on periodic basis to make sure the elevators are desanitized. The staircases are provided with sanitizers. People are encouraged to walk up and down. While you do all of these protocols at your workplace, where thermal screen cameras are there, you're monitoring your temperature, there are help desks, there is quarantine zone, there are ambulances waiting, there are doctors on call. Can you provide all of that at your home? You can't. Predominantly, most of those people are actually scared to go to work, but they were getting out of their homes for their grocery or their minimum needs. Here, the office gives you food. It's giving you, in most cases, your coffee on the desk, which you can go and get. So what's really important is to manage the social distancing part really well. And wherever the public bottleneck spaces are within the large gated communities is what you need to organize for. And once you're inside those gated communities, they're actually far safer than your home most times. So having said that, it's all about encouraging the population to start coming to work. And once they move out, they will realize the safe spectrum of the workspace. What's only the piece missing is the public transport or the transport facilities that need to get sanitized or given comfort for them to leave their home and come to work. Otherwise, actually, workplace is far more safer.
Okay. So great points, Vinod. And we have noted the fact that you have noted that you were the last to comment. So for the next question, rest assured, you will be the first. And let me also share the next question with you, on around which we would like to discuss. How will we measure success of all the activities which we are doing in the building, as well as their outcome on the inhabitants going forward? So I think you all made very good points, and they are very well captured through a study which was done by the Harvard Healthy Building Design Project under the Chan Public Health School, Harvard Chan Public Health School, as well as Harvard Business School. And I will ask Siddharth now to pull up just one slide from that study which summarizes the points which you have made. And basically, this study is saying that for any hazard, occupational health handles it through layers of defense. This hierarchy of defense is going to work as follows in the buildings which are now going to be populated. So can you all see this this slide?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you will see on the x-axis, there is just effectiveness. The 0 as well as infinite of x-axis, there is only effectiveness. And on the y-axis, there is business impact from high to low. And if you will see that the first and most effective way that they have concluded is work from home, elimination from exposure, work from home. Second is critical jobs. Only ask people to return who are doing critical jobs, which cannot be done from home. This is a point which came up from one of the speakers. Then as far as healthy buildings are concerned, the third level is bring in technology. So we know that the foundations of healthy buildings are centered around 4 parameters. First is ventilation, second is thermal health, third is water and air quality, and fourth is amount of indoor nature or biophilic design, what kind of views you get. So studies have been done on the fact that ventilation, it influences 57% of sick leave, and they are quite multi-center studies which these authors have based their final recommendations on. They've also concluded that even a 1 degree Fahrenheit deviation in thermal temperature from the optimal temperature leads to an almost 2% decrease in output. And water and air quality, as you know, is very important. It should be free of pollutants, free of pathogens. So the engineering interventions are air purifiers, they are touchless entries, as you said, elevator designs, elevator bank designs. How many people who are waiting, not only who would cram up in the elevator, how many people are waiting, sinks and toilet flushes with sensors, new protocols of cleaning, timing and frequency. This is what is the third safeguard. The fourth safeguard is administrative controls, where we need to de-densify workspaces and maintain social distance through time and space. Time you've already spoken about. They also speak about 2 shifts, 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. with 1 to 2 p.m. being dedicated to deep cleaning. And they've also said that it doesn't matter that if people do not come exactly at the beginning of their shift. Plus staggering of people, maybe by intervals of 10-15 minutes, will decongest the elevator banks and the elevator queues. In terms of space also, they speak about repurposing, moving of the desks into even conference rooms and outdoor and common areas. They also speak about that no gathering which has more than 10 people should be physical, it should be virtual. Staying at the edges of the room, no handshakes, pats, etc. And when I was speaking with a colleague who asked me that without pats it is very difficult for me to work. So I said that we will have to expand our vocabulary through gestures, etc., which happen from a distance, which communicate something like what a pat used to. And the last one, of course, is PPE. So you have to wear mask while you're going to work, when you're in common areas and in elevators, etc. So this is broadly the layers of defense and their effectiveness, business impact, and you can also calculate their financial impact, which summarizes what the panel has very well put together so far. Now I come to the next point of discussion, and where I will start with Vinod, which is how do you measure success? How do you measure that your controls are working and your controls are safeguarding actually finally the health of the worker in your workplace? And after that I will come to Abhishek on this so that he may prepare. Yeah, go ahead, Vinod.
See, measurement of success, there are 2 or 3 different parameters under which you can actually measure it. One is the tangible, where you're physically bringing in all of the protocols in place, and there is a proper measurable accountability of those protocols, which you're constantly engaging your occupiers with, so that you get instant feedback and you keep correcting processes and adding to processes and layers in terms of ensuring that the protocol is far more robust and is running efficiently. The second important thing, obviously, is the comfort and the happiness quotient of coming back to work, which the employees have to feel when they're back in. That is a rest assured that when you see this kind of level of protocols being put at the workplace, they will certainly be very comfortable to come back. It's an inertia that will break really quickly. What needs to get done is to ensure that their journey to the workplace is secure. So that is the only thing really today that might cause them some level of anxiety to come to work. And if we can bring along protocols that are far more robust in public transportation and public transport systems, and find a way to get people to work and come efficiently to work, I think that will change the game. Because while you mentioned staggering, deferring timings, 2 shifts and 3 shifts, making sure that there is a 6 feet distance in your desk spaces, short term you will have lesser number of people around you, and later on your average from an 80 square foot, for example, to move to 120 square foot a person, making sure that cafeterias are densified, making sure apps get you food on your desk, making sure you're not touching the elevators, you're not touching taps in bathrooms, you're not touching any of the contact doors, etc. And you have innovative ways of making sure you can do all of that. It's more a cultural shift till the time we have a visible cure or an immunization to the virus. It's a new normal we have to all adapt to. And the minute we adapt to this, I think you will see success, and you will see between 70 and 80% of the people come back to the work spaces.
Sure. So basically, we are trying to concentrate on the indoor environment, and you made some good points there, that how stringently we make sure that everybody follows. Can you all please put your microphone on the off, please? Yeah. How stringently the protocol is followed. What would you like to add to that, Abhishek, the points which Vinod has made? Abhishek?
Sure. So I think just add a quick couple of points. One is that, and I'm not sure it's different from what Vinod said, but we don't want to be doing lip service to any of the protocols, right? So while there is no scorecard or a battle that we want to win, saying, we are at 10 and somebody else is at 9, because I think this is a battle where everyone needs to be at the same score. One of the ways we want to measure success is by not doing lip service to any of the protocols. And as an example, we have designated a chief health and safety officer who, has some understanding of this, but someone who's not from the asset management or the community management, division. Because one of the things we saw is that, using an old accounting jargon, the checker and the maker cannot really be the same, right? So we wanted somebody from a different division of the company to actually be monitoring the protocols to make sure we're not doing just lip service. What other sort of measures would we have? Of course, there are certain measures on indoor air quality, on the wellness standards. We are gradually implementing more and more certifications of that. But to us, the biggest measure, and we have no intention of pressurizing anybody, but we are fortunate that at a contractual level, our occupancy is upwards of 70%. Obviously, the footfalls are much lower. For us, the real success would be when people actually start, voting with their feet and coming back to the workspace, right? That's the biggest success. Again, I don't want to jinx myself. This is not about us winning and somebody else losing. I think we have to take this one step at a time. And if people start feeling comfortable with all the good things we are doing and come willingly to the workspaces, I think that would be the best measure of success.
Excellent point you have made once again, Abhishek. You have said that everybody, I was tempted to say everybody should be on 10, because there is no chance of a 9 here. Second point which you made was that the checker and the maker should be different. That means every person may think ethnocentrically, every group thinks ethnocentrically. By ethnocentric, I mean we feel that we are correct, other guy is wrong. You know, we are best. But that best or 10 out of 10 should come to us evaluated by an independent authority and not through our own judgment. And the last point which you made was people have to vote through their feet. Okay. So, and I think this point came earlier also when Mani said that only 50% of the people have agreed so far to come. And so people have to vote through their feet. Very good points. Coming to Sigrid, if you'd like to add anything to this, the number of how do you measure success?
All right, thank you. So maybe I was like thinking I can share the China experience here because in many parts here we're looking at China, how they have reopened, and now that they are about 90% back to the office. So how did they do that? You know, just like what the rest of the panelists have said, you know, there have been a lot of measures that were put in place, very stringent ones. These are like the health checks, the temperature checking, compulsory wearing of masks, and practices of social distancing. And there are penalties if you actually violate them. However, you know, a few days ago, there was a reported rise in the number of cases in Beijing once again. And this was one of the things that, you know, I was in conversation this afternoon with some of our members there. And I thought what was interesting that China has been very strict in the enforcement, but suddenly this rise in the case just came out of the blue. So I think, you know, this is where everyone has to be vigilant that whilst you take all the necessary precautionary measures, you know, there's always that still possibility. So it's very important that everyone, you know, from the occupier side, the owners and the governments will really have to work together. One of the things that they mentioned in China that is a public challenge, and I think this was touched upon later a while ago, was in the public transportation. Many are still hesitant to take the trains, you know, just because they feel unsafe. But what they have been doing is that they're taking taxis, they're driving to work. And so you can see that there has been a rise in traffic congestion. And but they do what they gotta do, because right now is that they are mandated to come back to work in many, many places. And what we've also seen in some places is that like in workplace practices, they're splitting teams, you know, so the flexible hours, these are all in place. Okay, so is it foolproof? You know, just to the point that, you know, a case can happen again, a rise in the cases can happen again, but you do what you can to make sure that the workplace environment is safe for everyone to come back to.
Great points, Sigrid. In fact, you have added to what Vinod said. Vinod said that the public transport is also very important, that it stays safe. And you have brought in the role of the government. You have also said that some organizations have mandated their people to come. It will be interesting to see what kind of resolve they have going forward. Because I have also known some CEOs who have in the beginning mandated people to come forcefully to the office. Maybe the office was not ready, or wherever they were working, maybe hospitals or wherever were not safe enough, and they kind of backtracked on their decision or mandate as they saw that there is greater safety protocol which has to be implemented. Great point you brought in. Mani, would you like to add anything to this? Otherwise, I'll present to you a summary of what you have said and what maybe a couple of other points.
Sure, I'll just take 2 minutes. So a couple of other things. One is obviously the voice of the employees survey that Vinod talked about, employees being happy as they come into work. That's the first part of it. The second is what percentage of people actually come to work. So for example, if you say that 100 people have to come into work and the turnout happens to be 10 or 20 people, it means that something has failed. Either the employees are not convinced about the safety measures you have, or you've done a pretty poor job at communicating with people. And lastly, again, right, are people doing the kinds of activities that they are doing, and how productive are they when they get back to work? So that's another very, very strong measure which will point out to the success of the steps taken by the management team.
Super points. Can we just pull up the other chart, Siddharth? You have said money, voice of the employee. And this chart, which I'm going to show you, is saying add the voice of the machine to the voice of the employee. What is this chart talking about? It is saying that a building should have health performance indicators. And it says these can be direct indicators or indirect indicators, leading indicators or lagging indicators. Leading indicators, if you'll go to the left of the chart, you will see are those indicators which tell you through building design. If you go to the bottom quadrant, building composition, ventilation check, continuous commissioning, air pollution check, and so on, particulate impurity, pathogen load. These are the leading indicators. They tell you before the problem has happened. And these, the lagging indicators are those which, as you said, will come through the voice of the employee. So the voice of the machine is the leading indicator, and the voice of the employee, that means whether he's feeling ill, whether he's feeling more productive, how many sick days have gone up, and so on. So similarly, if we go to direct and indirect indicators, indirect indicators tell you how well the building is performing, and direct indicators tell you how well the employees are performing. So these can be some measures through which we come to a more objective assessment of how our building is performing. And these can be then communicated and a more objective assessment can be made so that we reach the 10 out of 10 which Abhishek spoke of, which every building should have. Every building should be able to 100% safeguard the inhabitants. Siddharth, can we come back? So given these points which you have brought up, you have brought all these points, maybe not in the exact lexicon which I presented thanks to this study, but you all had brought in these points already. So given this, now how we can incorporate these learnings in designing future architecture and workflow streams. And now this time, let me start with Abhishek. Abhishek.
Sure. So, I would just go back to what you said right at the beginning on how architecture and design has been influenced by infection. And I think for good or for bad, this will be one more example added to that list. A lot of people keep debating as to whether, any of the new design changes or any of the new design thinking should be limited, given that, we will have a vaccine, sometime soon. But to me, I think human habits change fairly quickly. I think one of our biggest resilience attributes is how fast we can adapt to something different. And I think to that extent, this change about not wanting crowds, not wanting to have high intensity interaction with people, in my personal view, is going to be a change almost which is permanent. Now, to that extent, of course, we've already seen a lot of design thinkers coming up with different formats on how the interiors would look like. how the common amenities would be, how the sort of access would be, how people would this whole concept of the third space that has been very prevalent in real estate in terms of meshing or blending the personal with the work, whether that concept will remain relevant, whether it will enhance in its relevance because you would live, work and play in the same place. So I think a lot of these things will continue to evolve. In my view, we have not yet come to the right conclusion. I think I hate to be a pessimist, but I don't think the world has yet seen anywhere close to the end of this pandemic. So as some of the things evolve and continue to influence our daily lives, the design elements will, of course, follow them. So I think a lot of work to be done, but to my mind, many of the changes are going to become permanent.
This is not the new normal. You have said this is the new flux. The new normal is yet to arrive. Very good. Excellent point. And you have also said, yes, buildings have been, not only the building industry, even construction industry was hugely influenced by infection. During the time of the earlier plagues, it was believed, as I said on an earlier occasion, that disease is caused through miasma. Miasma is these toxic fumes which come from the earth and rise up, which is why a lot of millions of square kilometers of soil was paved with flagstones and cemented, and which is why all the foundations, etc., were very securely closed. And whenever there was a crack in a building, people felt that now those fumes will enter. So for the right reason as well as for the wrong reason, and now this time more for the right reason, because we can peep deeper into why this problem is coming. The building designs will change. So how do you think they will change? Money. And I'm coming finally for this question to Sigrid and then to Vinod. And I have another element to add from one of the questions which I have received for you, Sigrid, and which comes from Raghavan, where he says, is there any study or forecast that tells how many people what percentage of people will be coming back to work and who would like to continue working from home? But before that, to money, what design changes you anticipate? We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Sorry, I muted myself. I know you asked me only about design changes in the workplace, but before that, if I can just take a minute on what I'm seeing in the residential real estate sector, because we are squarely in that sector, is that designs of homes are changing, right? So when you look at at cities such as Bangalore and Mumbai, people are asking for that extra half a room, right, which they can kind of use as home offices because working from remote is here to stay for at least part of the time. In terms of design of change of buildings, I think Abhishek and Vinod are much better equipped to answer that question. But personally, I think that a lot of companies had used hot desking, right, and that might be a risk, right, going forward if you're going to, because if you're going to have the same desk occupied by different people during the day, I think you're increasing the chances of infection spreading through the workplace. The second is that, over the last few years, it's kind of the way the floor has been laid out is it's complete open office. But I wonder if cubicles will now make a reappearance because certainly in case of transmission of let's say infection, if somebody sneezes or something, you at least have some barrier to protect you. So I can see that that workstations will probably be more in the form of cubicles, right? And the third thing I can see is that people are going to be very reluctant to take elevators. So in terms of the building facilities, the people who are constructing buildings may have to provide more elevators, right, going forward than what it is now, because I believe even in an elevator, going forward, you're not supposed to look at each other, but you're supposed to look, you're facing away from each other, right? So that those are the kinds of quick things that come to my mind in terms of what I see in terms of architectural changes.
Very good points, and I'm glad that you said that you are more aware of what design changes are coming on the home front, on the residential front. And that is an observation of all the leading experts, social anthropologists, medical anthropologists, that whatever space is hit first, those innovations come earlier. So we were immersed in our homes for maybe 84 days, but that was a very strong immersion only in the home. So we have been able to come out with greater ideas on how the home should improve. And offices are just coming into the picture. So maybe in times to come, these things will change. And hot desking, you're right. The size of the desk has been going down from 1.8 meter and now it has gone down to 1.4 meter. Now the size of the desk is going to increase. The regular desk I'm talking about, let us say a call center speaker. You've spoken about elevators. Elevators will find less, let me say, favor, and they will be more and more replaced by escalators or open ways to ascend. Great. Now, before I come to Sigrid, let me tell Vinod what is the question I'm coming to you for. Will real estate owners transition from pure rental to minimum guarantee and revenue share? That means, will the business model of commercial renting out change, or commercial transactions change from pure rental to minimum guarantee and revenue share? And all these questions are coming from leading CEOs and CXOs. This one comes from Swapnil, last one came from Raghu. They are heads of CGO of FoodWorks and Bharti respectively. And so kindly be prepared for that question soon as I finish with Sigrid. Sigrid, the question is, what design changes you anticipate, and what is the number of employees in terms of percentage you feel are likely to come back to the workplace in the next, say, 6 months?
Okay. Let me answer first the question. I thought that was quite a good one. For Asia, we cannot really generalize, in terms of the number of the workforce will be working from home, because each country is quite different. And I'll give you an example. Japan is one case where work from home has not really taken off. They had a state of emergency in Tokyo, in Japan, actually, the whole country, about a month ago. And there has been a lot of difficulty among the companies to implement that, just because a lot of the homes are not equipped to do that. At the same time, too, from a cultural perspective, the face-to-face interaction is something that the Japanese culture essentially values, and they're big into using the fax machines and having stamped their documents, and these are things that you cannot really do while working from home. Now, will that change going forward, given that they were quite had challenges implementing this during their own version of lockdown? We don't think things are going to change dramatically for the country of Japan. So I would also look at this on a sector basis, and I have made reference to this a while ago. You got to take a look at each the occupiers sector. Technology is so different from the finance and also the BPO. The BPO, I think what we have seen is that there were so many difficulties in carrying out their work. I think we had some cases in India and also in the Philippines where they were citing just the infrastructure wasn't equipped to be able to do that. The internet connection wasn't really working so well. And so that has to be addressed, if this has to change. But then there's also a case when a lot of this, the BPO sector and technology, by the way, if you look at the cohort working in these sectors, they tend to be the younger cohort. And these are people who like to go to the office and have, to socialize with their workers. And so this is something that, has to be done on a sector level and country level. So I think right now this is being studied by many. And in terms of the impact on the design, as I've mentioned, a lot of our members don't expect a seismic change in real estate, in the development, for a host of reasons. Real estate cost in many places is very high. And so to reconfigure a building could be very expensive if you're looking at Hong Kong, Singapore, and some of the very, very pricey locations. But interior design has to change, absolutely. Our esteemed panelists have touched upon that quite well in terms of what has to be done and to comply with the rules that are set to make sure that everyone feels safe to return to work. But I thought what is interesting too is that people are also, a lot of our member owners are saying that there is also a consequent need for more space because of the de-densification, right? So the net effect is still ambiguous at this point in time. Which one would win? Like the component where some of the functions will have to be done remotely from home or in the office, and also where some of the tasks, can be relegated to lower cost locations. Like in the case of Singapore and Hong Kong, for example, they have this popular hub and spoke model, wherein some of the necessary functions that have to be in the central location, will be there, but some of the back office will have to be in the suburban locations. So many are speculating that the demand for the secondary locations will actually go up as a consequence because of the de-densification that is happening as a result of COVID-19.
Yeah. Great points. So you have said that interior designs may change faster and more easily, and I fully agree with that. And maybe the significant change in interior designs can de-densify the space and make it more effective and safe. And water cooler gossip. You have kind of alluded to the fact that we are all addicted to water cooler gossip. And of course, then you paraphrase by saying that it is especially the young who are more addicted to that. I fully agree with this. I also feel that there will be a cohort which would be hesitant in going to the office. And they will find substitutes by expanding their lexicon, as I said, to such things like water cooler gossip, as well as the pat and the hug, etc. Because I was reading that in the Bible there are only 3 colors. It doesn't mean that there were only 3 colors when Bible was written. Our vocabulary was limited. As our vocabulary expanded because of whatever necessities, we now express maybe thousands of colors through words. So similarly, we may be able to express the same emotion which we express through a pat, or we may be able to express through emojis or things, or expanding lexicon, the water cooler gossip gratification which we get. But your point is very valid, and behind you I find a very fine staircase as the backdrop, and this also could be a more luxury of the post-COVID era. Rather than getting boxed in, you will have more wider spaces, corridors, etc. Vinod, additions to how you feel the design will change, as well as the question I posed to you regarding business model changes.
So just to add to what everyone has said, I think what architects today are working on are identifying the bottlenecks where there is a larger congregation of people at a given point in time. And those bottlenecks need to be addressed, whether it is public spaces, common spaces, entry-exit points, toilets, cafeterias, etc. While you're at your desk, pretty much from a 80 square feet a person density, if you densify, de-densify to 120, 130 odd square foot per person density, you will easily have the social distancing norms in place while you're at the workplace. So that's not such a complicated challenge to take on. You will see that densification moving away from 80 square feet to coming to 100 and 120 square feet. So jointly with occupiers and architects, new design changes will take place for how you treat. You may have entry and exit doors that might be separate. You will have staircases that will be more energized to be used for at least ascending down, coming and using them for the lower floors, etc. Elevator densities will be staggered. You may get in from different levels of the building to enter in. Different elevators will get dedicated to the different populations going to different floors. So you will navigate around all of those things, and we're already studying and creating options which are seem to be reasonably workable. And we will, once people are back in full strength, we will know how to further navigate that. So I don't see that as a big challenge going forward. What's important is the fear in all of our minds and hearts. The minute the fear walks away from us, we either immunize or we realize that there's a cure in the horizon, etc. All of these things will change away. So I don't think culturally beyond 12 to 18 months, there'll be a dramatic shift. But for the next 12 to 18 months, we will be working in that direction to ensure health and safety for everyone. Coming back to your other question about revenue share, office blocks and office environments, I don't see changing from their current formats. There will be fixed rental contracts as you've seen in the past and will continue to see them in the future. There may be certain opportunistic growth opportunities even in this market. We're seeing a few tenants come and say, we don't have the approvable capex, but we see the business. Can you do a fitted out COVID environment friendly facility for us to occupy? And if they are grade A tenants, we are more than happy to actually give them that opportunity to occupy and amortize that fit out over the next 5, 7, 10 years, because we see that giving them a kickstart to their business. Retail spaces, food spaces will still evolve. How the use of that is going to really determine the business continuity and model of that. Our food courts were anyways in the business parks on revenue share. So that was more a convenience offered to all employees. And you will now be more technology driven, where you will order your food from your desk. You might have an equivalent of a Swiggy who will deliver the food from the food court to your desk. You may not even want to go to the food court. So all of those things will happen. Having said that, from a retail, from public spaces like theaters, etc., have to evolve. We're early days. We have to watch them for the next quarter or 2 quarters to see in which direction they go. But office spaces, I don't think is moving to revenue share. We'll be more than happy to judge revenue and say that when you grow back, please give us much higher revenues. I don't think tenants for office spaces are looking at that. They want a fixed, escalated outflow captured over a 10-year period or a 12-year period. So I don't see that changing.
I fully agree with you. And I also would like to underline what you've said and amplify what you've said, that a lot depends on how soon we will have a vaccine or an effective remedy, and how effective is the vaccine, and what are the chances of relapse or another wave coming. If that happens very soon, then we will maybe change less, and we will come back with gusto, of course, reassured not only through the courage which people like leaders like you will inspire, but also through data which is irrefutable and which proves that the buildings which we are inviting the people to are safe. And I think in this dialogue, we really learned from this panel, and it was a very high quality discussion on how the risk of the employees coming and working at our workplaces can be minimized, how they can be measured, and what is the overall outlook of design changes, etc., which is likely to happen in times to come. Thank you very much. Really appreciate and enjoyed the dialogue. And now I'll pass the mic on to Siddharth.
Thank you very much, distinguished panelists. It's been an absolute privilege and an honor. Our leaders and I have taken home so many nuggets from today's conversation. In fact, today we're still receiving some positive messages from our leaders, but we may have missed out on some questions. So I will come to you individually to seek some of your answers to those questions. And thank you to our attendees for staying in large numbers even till the end. All distinguished leaders for joining in. So thank you so much. And whether you would like to engage with us through an expert panel or as a learner, you're invited to connect with us for membership as well. We are soon launching our exclusive digital networking platform. The LinkedIn for leaders will be out soon, and we will be sending out invitations to the first 1,000 members across these 5 sectors. So thank you all for joining in, and stay engaged. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.